What's up, YouTube? Versus Donnie, and welcome to another edition of Donnie's Den. I'm at a different location today. Usually I do my videos on the in my backyard on my patio, but it's so hot here in South Carolina. Index is like 107, so my phone just wasn't cooperating and it just overheated and it just shut off during my video. So I was forced to go to the back porch to do this video. So it is what it is, right? Do what you gotta do. You adapt. So I just want to briefly talk about real quick on this edition of Donnie's Den. About thick skin. In this day and age, you really gotta develop thick skin. Like a crocodile, like an alligator, you gotta have that thick skin. People will criticize you in your personal life. People will talk about you and criticize you in your workplace, and they'll just try to attack you for whatever means that they have. They will do so. And you gotta be able to develop thick skin. Just be able to forge an armor. A shield. So all those arrows and them stones and whatnot will just bounce right off you, and they don't penetrate or affect you whatsoever. And I think the reason why people try to attack you in that way is because of their own insecurities, jealousy. They really hate to see someone else get ahead. They really hate to see someone that's, going places, and mind you, they're the ones that, lack, and putting in the effort in, whether their daily lives or their work lives, they really lack, they, half-ass, do everything, anything at all, really. And then when someone is really, putting in the effort, putting in, the work, putting in the time, they really want to start, they notice that. Everybody notices that. And then, your haters, well, of course, they're going to notice that. And, of course, what they're going to do, they're going to start to hate. So they're going to start to, saying things, that's not true, or, coming out with false stories or innuendos or whatnot, try to disgrace your character, and your abilities, just to make them feel secure about who they are, and to help, in their own way, compensate for their own lack of their ability of doing things. But you know what, you got to again, you got to develop thick skin. You can't let any of that get to you. You can't listen to any of that. The only criticism that you really need to listen to is the ones who's in your corner, the ones that's trying to forge you, the ones that are trying to make you better. Don't listen to the ones that's trying to make you, bitter because they are. The only critic, the hardest critic there is yourself. You know what you can do, you know what you can't do, you know what your boundaries are, you know what to say no, and you just gotta know the value of really who you are. Don't listen to anyone else who thinks that they know your worth and that, they think they know your value. That's not, their place whatsoever. You know what you've done, you know what you're trying to do, you know what you're striving to do, what you're trying to accomplish. And just, don't let anybody bring you down on that aspect of it, So, that's when you gotta really develop thick skin. You got so many critics out there again. And, I'm guilty, of not really having thick skin. People will say things and they'll make remarks or comments or, whatnot, you know, and they do that on purpose because they know that they can penetrate, they can get to you. They'll make you feel some kind of way about yourself, And, here lately I've learned it's not their opinion that matters, it's the opinion of yourself that really matters. And again, you really have to learn to develop thick skin, and it's a day-to-day, daily process in order to condition yourself to have thick skin. Everybody's going to be critical of you, whether it's going to be in a positive sense, which you always want to welcome because you always want to know, what you're doing wrong, and, you want to be able to improve upon that, to be better and to do better. But then you always got your haters that's going to be critical of you just because, they're not in that position that you are in. They want to be, but they want to put in the work, but you have, and therefore they're jealous of that, and therefore they want to critique, everything that you do. That's not their place. If you want to be a failure, then go ahead and continue to do, what you're doing. You want to be a winner, then you continue to do the right things, and just work. And work hard and have focus, to do the best that you possibly can do. So, everybody can't be your judge and jury, Only you can be, only God can be, and you only know what's in your heart and what you're capable of doing, and the only thing you can really do is just try and strive to be the best that you can be every day, regardless of what everybody thinks or what anybody thinks. At the end of the day, it's what you think about yourself at the end of the day, and don't let anybody shoot them slings and arrows to you. Don't let all those arrows penetrate your soul and your heart, and make you feel some kind of way that they want you to feel. Be who you are. Be 100. Be real. Do a good job. Know your worth. You understand your worth, then achieve your worth. Be who you are, not what other people, being jealous and, think that you don't deserve it. That's not true. That's their downfall. That's not yours. Prove yourself, not only to the ones that matter, but prove yourself to the number one person that matters, and that's you. Be always true to you. Be always true to your heart, no matter what. And whatever people say, develop that thick skin. Like Superman, let all those bullets just bounce right off. Because really, at the end of the day, their opinion doesn't matter. It's what you know, it isn't what they think. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this message. If you like this content, I encourage you to please like and share and subscribe to this channel. If you would like to support this platform, this content, then I encourage you to please do so. I'll leave the information in the Cash App and the Venmo app in the comments below. So with that being said, this is Donnie. Stay cool. I'm trying to. And until next time, keep it 100, keep it real. Peace.